Suppose I have 500 rupees in my pocket and I can feed 20 people dinner at my house and I'm inviting 100 people at my house. What will happen? I should invite only 20 people because I have that much money only, right? Same thing happened with our directive principles and fundamental rights. When our country got independence, it was not possible for India to provide each and every right as a fundamental right because of the economic capacity. And that's why certain rights are there as fundamental rights and certain rights are there as directive principles. Hello everyone, Dr. Vaishali here. Today's topic of discussion is relationship between fundamental rights and directive principles. So let us begin. So whether directive principles are inferior to fundamental rights or are directive principles superior to fundamental rights or are directive principles of equal importance as that of fundamental rights. So whether fundamental rights are superior or directive principles are superior or both are equal. We are going to see this relationship through constitutional provisions as well as judicial decisions. When Britishers left India, we didn't copy the entire British law. What we did, we borrowed different principles from various other countries. The Constitution of India is not the free gift of the British Parliament. It is the end product of the research and deliberation by a body of the distinguished and dedicated representatives of the people who were there in the Constituent Assembly. They prepared it after studying various constitutions of the world and selecting the best out of them, keeping in view the aims and aspirations of freedom fighters and Indian people. So, in Indian constitution, various principles from foreign countries are borrowed which were suitable to Indian conditions. Lots of students ask me a question, why fundamental rights are guaranteed and why directive principles are not guaranteed. So the very purpose to withdraw certain subjects like fundamental rights from the changing pattern of political controversy to place them beyond the reach of majority in a legislature and officials in the government. So to protect certain rights from ruling parties, right? They are there in the fundamental rights because fundamental rights are not easily changeable by the political parties. Otherwise, what will happen? Every time a new political party will come and they will change our fundamental rights as per their political agenda. So in order to avoid that, certain rights are guaranteed as a matter of right. Then why directive principles are not guaranteed? Let us go through it. The intention of the constitution framers was to establish in India a democracy, political, economic and social. These rights were broadly speaking divided into two categories. So basic human rights are divided into two categories. Political and civil rights, which is called as a first generation of rights, and social and economic rights, which is a second generation of rights. So once you get political and civil rights, then you get social and economic rights. Once you study till 12th, then you can go for a further education. So once your basic needs are fulfilled, you can ask for further needs, right? So political and civil rights are nothing but fundamental rights and social and economic rights are nothing but directive principles. So once you get your basic rights, you can get the advanced rights. That's it, nothing else. The political and civil rights which were provided as fundamental rights and the later being considered beyond individual reach under the prevailing circumstances were titled as directive principles of state policy. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, while explaining the object underlying the directive principles, observed, while we have established political democracy, it is also the desire that we should law down as our ideals economic democracy. We do not want merely to lay down a mechanism to enable people to come and capture power. The Constitution also wishes to lay down an ideal before those who would be forming the government. That is ideal that ideal is economic democracy, whereby so far as I am concerned, I understand to mean one man, one vote. By this, it is clear that the main object behind the directives is to achieve the ideal of economic democracy. So that's what is intended by Dr. Ambedkar, that political democracy is established. Everyone got a right to vote. But our aim is not just the political democracy. It is social and economic democracy. So that is a goal which is kept in front of the politicians or the parliamentarians. So fundamental rights are given to individuals as rights and directive principles are given as a goals to be achieved by the politicians. So before understanding this, we should understand three concepts: police state, laissez-faire state and welfare state. When we got independence, India was not economically that well. So the policy which was adopted by our Constituent Assembly was police state. State will do a function of police, just maintaining peace and order in society. Afterwards, we needed lots of enterprises or the industries. So unlimited contractual freedom was given to individual and state will not interfere that much. That is laissez-faire. And afterwards, now it is a welfare state. State will go beyond the police state and laissez-faire state, and state will provide something beyond the basic things. State will provide directive principles. So that is our aim, and that's why fundamental rights is the first step and directive principles is the goal which needs to be achieved by our politicians. So what is the nature of directive principles? Article 35 to 52 are directive principles. They are in part 4 of the Constitution. They are not enforceable. So if your directive principles are violated, you cannot go to a court as a matter of right. You can go and court will entertain, but not as a matter of right. Directive principles establish social and economic democracy. They are moral and political sanctions. They promote the welfare of the entire community and they are positive in nature as it requires the government to do certain things. Nature of fundamental rights. Fundamental rights are not transferable, they are inalienable or inherent. So even if you don't want them, you have to have them till you die. So fundamental rights come with you and they stay with you. There are 7 rights: to equality, right to freedom, right against exploitation, right to freedom of religion, cultural and educational rights, right to constitutional remedies, and right to education. Fundamental rights establish political democracy. They are legal sanctions and they promote individual welfare. Judiciary and fundamental rights and directive principles. In several early cases, the Supreme Court took the literal interpretative approach to Article 37 and ruled that directive principles could not override a fundamental right. And in case of conflict between the two, the fundamental right would prevail over the directive principles. So Supreme Court initially took a view that fundamental rights are important as compared to directive principles, and when there is a conflict between two, fundamental rights should prevail or fundamental rights should win. State of Madras versus Champakam Dorai Rajat was the first case in this thread. In this case, it was held that all fundamental rights are superior to directive principles. The conflict was between Article 16(2), which is a fundamental rights, and between Article 46, which is a directive principles. The Supreme Court held that Article 37 expressly says that directive principles are not enforceable by the courts, and that's why fundamental rights are superior to directive principles. Now the second case is not a case, it's a reference. It's a Ray Kerala Education Bill. In this case, it was held that fundamental rights and directive principles should be harmoniously constructed. So, Supreme Court in this case had propounded the doctrine of harmonious construction to avoid a situation of conflict while enforcing directive principles and fundamental rights. As per this doctrine, the court held that there is no inherent conflict between fundamental rights and directive principles. And the courts, while interpreting a law, should attempt to give effect to both as far as possible. That it should try to harmonize the two as far as possible. The court further said that where two interpretations of law are possible and one interpretation validates the law while other interpretation makes the law unconstitutional and void, then the first interpretation which validates the law should be adopted. But if only one interpretation is possible which leads to conflict between fundamental rights and directive principles, then fundamental rights should prevail. So Supreme Court provided that fundamental rights and directive principles are not against each other. They are basically, directive principles are extensions of fundamental rights. So as far as possible, they should be harmoniously interpreted and applied. In the next case, Golaknath versus State of Punjab, it was held that fundamental rights cannot be abridged or diluted. In this case, for the first time, a bench of 11 judges of the Supreme Court was formed. The court in this case laid down that fundamental rights cannot be abridged or diluted to implement the directive principles. This decision forced the government to amend the constitution. By the 24th Amendment Act 1971, the Parliament amended Article 13 and 368. This amendment made it clear that Parliament has the power to amend any part of the Constitution, including fundamental rights, and the word law as used in Article 13 does not include a Constitutional Amendment Act. So in Golaknath versus State of Punjab, it was held that while giving effect to directive principles, fundamental rights cannot be abridged, or abridged means taken away or diluted. In the next case, famous Keshwanand Bharati versus State of Kerala, it was held that fundamental rights and directive principles are supplement to each other. Keshwanand Bharati, which was heard by largest ever constitution bench of 13 judges, showed a great concern for DPSP, or directive principles of state policy. Justice Chandrachud said that directive principles of state policy should not be permitted to become a mere rope of sand. If the state fails to create conditions in which the fundamental freedoms could be enjoyed by all, the freedom of few will be at the mercy of many, and then all freedoms will vanish. Court held that by the majority that the fundamental rights and directive principle constitute the conscience of the Constitution. There is no antithesis between the fundamental rights and the directive principles. In fact, both are supplementary and complementary to each other. So, Constitution is a coherent theme, and fundamental rights and directive principles are part of that theme. Directive principles are not against fundamental rights. In fact, they support fundamental rights. So, both are supplementary and complementary to each other. Next case is about Minerva Mills Limited versus Union of India. Supreme Court observed that fundamental rights are not end in themselves, but are the means to an end. End is specific in directive principles. So, education till 12th is a way. But what is the ultimate goal? Completing your LLB or completing your LLM is your goal. So, directive principles are nothing but that LLM or LLB. So, degree. And so, first step is fundamental rights, and the last aim is directive principles. Once you get all your fundamental rights, once your country progresses and goes to such a level that they can provide directive principles as a matter of right, that's the ultimate aim, or that's our final aim of the Constitution. So both the fundamental rights and directive principles of the state policy are embodying the philosophy of our Constitution, the philosophy of justice, social, economic and political. They are two wheels of the chariot, and so they can bring the economic democracy if both are given as a matter of right. In Unnikrishnan versus State of Andhra Pradesh, again the same view was confirmed. Supreme Court followed the same principle of Keshwanand Bharati and held that fundamental rights and directive principles are supplementary and complementary to each other, and provisions of Part 3 should be read under the light of preamble and directive principles. So ultimately what we can say, that judiciary came to a level when the judiciary started giving directive principles the same status of fundamental rights, and judiciary recognized that there is no conflict between both. In fact, both are supplementary and complementary to each other. And judiciary, do you know what judiciary did? They started picking up the directive principles and keeping them under fundamental rights, or reading them under fundamental rights. Right to nutrition was made a part of fundamental right. Right to good sanitary facilities was made as a part of fundamental rights. So by the way of judicial activism, judiciary started implementing lots of directive principles under the name of fundamental rights. There are so many cases on the relationship between fundamental rights and directive principles. These are the basic cases which are expected from you. So when we check the answer sheet from students, we expect certain points, and these are the points which we are hoping from you. So you can take a pen and paper and you can note down these points. And just in order to provide you some notes, I started this pattern of teaching. And then the conclusion. Relationship between fundamental rights and directive principles of state policy is cohesive in nature and it is an essential part of basic structure of the Indian Constitution. Both are complementary and supplementary to each other. State should follow the guidelines enumerated in DPSPs to protect fundamental rights. Otherwise, what will happen? Nobody will vote those politicians who are not respecting directive principles. So, effect will be seen in the next election, and that's how directive principles needs to be respected by the politician. And then the comparative study. Fundamental rights are the basic rights guaranteed to the citizens. Directive principles are just the guidelines which are given to the parliamentarians. So fundamental rights are directly given to the citizens and directive principles are given to the parliamentarians in the form of directives. Fundamental rights are written in part 3, directive principles are written in part 4 of the Constitution. Fundamental rights are negative because it bans government from touching the fundamental rights, and directive principles are positive as it requires government to do certain things in order to provide directive principles. Fundamental rights are justiciable and they can be enforced in the court of law. Directive principles are not justiciable. Fundamental rights establish political democracy. Directive principles establish social and economic democracy. Fundamental rights are legal sanctions. Directive principles are more like moral and political sanctions. Parliamentarians respect them because effect will be seen in the next election and that's why they are moral and political sanctions. Fundamental rights promote individual welfare and the directive principles promote individual plus social welfare. So that's it about the relationship between directive principles and state policy. Please try to include each and every point mentioned by me. Make it a separate heading so that you will get all your marks which are there for the question. And one more thing, while writing a question on fundamental rights or directive principles or the relationship between both, you can refer the same case laws. So that's it for the day. Stay tuned till my next lecture. Goodbye and good luck.